Give.
And don't miss 2KG, Mondays live at 3 p.m. on KAKU 88.5 FM,
The voice of Maui. Annyeong!
This message is for all of you sitting in the passenger seat. And apologies if it gets a little uncomfortable. But how does it feel to be at the mercy of someone who thinks a random text is more important than your life? Someone who takes their eyes off the road while speeding along in a 3-ton hunk of steel. Freaky, right? Well, why not just ask them to stop? Or better yet, volunteer to text for them. It might be a little awkward, but believe me, you'll live.
Learn more at stoptextstoprex.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration.
It's Monday at 11 o'clock. It is April 1. We're not fools. We're here at the neutral zone. Welcome to the show. Please allow me to introduce myself. I'm a man of wealth and taste. I've been around for a long, long year. So many men sold away. And I was around when Jesus Christ had his moment of doubt and pain. Made damn sure that Pilate washed his hands and sealed his face. I thought I had put it on. Pleased to meet you. Hope you guessed my name. But what puzzling you is the nature of my game. Oh, I know that song. That's Mick Jagger. Not Mick Jagger singing, but Keith Richards and Mick Jagger. God, I was a little guy then. I was probably 20 years old, less. That's a long time ago. Sympathy for the Devil.
Yeah.
I chose that as a song to play after our little jingle. I thought that people wonder, what the heck is going on here, this neutral zone, or anything but neutral. Welcome to our show. This is Jason Schwartz. These glasses, I'm feeling like Elton John today, wearing these very white glasses. I can't see it. I was told that you didn't hear when I opened the show. It is April Fool's Day, but we're not fools. It's April 1st, and we have a wonderful show today. When I say 2019, it's a little surreal because we could be in any year. We are going to go on a journey today through all kinds of years, all kinds of places. Sometimes we're going to go to the best place, but right now we're going to go to the worst place.
Nice.
Barry Wurst.
Well done.
We have Barry Wurst, W-U-R-S-T.
Yep.
I must say, Barry is the best.
Thank you.
My lady friend Ariel, you've seen her, no Ariel, saw your review of Stoke, a movie that I got to see in your class.
That's right.
At University of Hawaii Maui College CreativeMedia World Cinema. I changed my schedule to be in your class, and it's on a Wednesday night. And it has been such an incredible learning experience, but also the movies that we get to see and the perspectives that we get. You know, some of you out there, just a few, are as old as I might be. And when I see someone who's surely decades younger than me talking about movies that I went to the movie theater, I remember Sweet Badass and, Badass Song and and I remember the exploitation at the moment, black exploitation films. I didn't think much about it at the time, but now looking back at what was going on and remembering social mores and how things are different. Barry, I want you to jump in because I'm having fun.
Well, thank you so much. No, I'm thrilled that you're in my class and we have the chance to meet. I love that too because I remember being, for example, as a kid, all those movies were taboo for me, particularly Sweetback's Badass Song, as you spoke about earlier. The film which came out in 1968, this is the film that gave us the blaxploitation movement. It was written, directed, produced, and basically cobbled together by the wonderful Melvin Van Peebles. It's the movie that basically changed the image of black men and women in cinema forever. Prior to Sweetback, if you saw a black man or woman in a movie, typically they were a homeless person or a chauffeur or a butler or or something truly condescending and degrading, because that's how it was in Hollywood for too long. Sidney Poitier was a breakthrough, and the movies he made were fantastic, but a lot of the characters he played, unfortunately, were very
stereotypic.
They were very one note, and he was playing more of a symbol than he was a character. And I love In the Heat of the Night. That's a fantastic movie, and I love To Sir With Love. He made some great films, but those characters, it was almost like he was playing the prototypical Sidney Poitier role. And I say that with respect because he was a true groundbreaker. He really was.
Well, it's very funny that you say that, because as you're talking, it's reminding me in class, he taught us a word that I learned called auteur.
Yes.
So that's the director and their style.
Yeah.
And I was mentioning that Sidney Poitier, I don't know, he's an author of his role.
He is.
Look at that.
I agree with you, yeah.
And like Paul Newman. When you see a Paul Newman movie, no matter what role he's playing, you saw him coming through. He created his own style.
Yes.
Sidney Poitier, same thing. He was creating a symbol outside of every role. He sort of carried his own presence.
Yes.
I've learned that with you in films. Could you imagine going to... I have not really been a fan of violent movies. I have a lady friend who... We don't go to violent movies because those images shouldn't... So here I am getting the exploration into horror and violence and seeing society change through the direction, a wonderful direction of you. How long have you been involved in looking at film?
Since I could crawl, basically. Honestly, I mean, well, to take it back a little bit, the oldest memory I have is seeing Star Wars in the movie theater with my father. And apparently it was in a movie theater in Florida. I remember there being a lot of neon lights in the theater. And I remember looking up at the screen and specific images that have stayed with me. And I remember, even as a very, very small child, thinking, whatever this is, I want more of this. This is great. And when I grew older, I learned that my mother was a star in Japanese B films back in the 1950s. She was the American princess in a series of films called Miboroshi Tanto. If you go to Japan and you turn on the TV at about 3 in the morning, you might see my mom like tied to a railroad track or tied to a chair with a bomb in her chest, and this guy who is not Christopher Reeve climbs through a window and saves her. So learning about that about my mother, and also discovering that my father made a lot of films as a young man. He was like a little Spielberg. He ran around with, I think it's 8mm camera. And he was making these little war epics in his backyard, and he actually showed them to me when I was in grade school. And it was very inspiring to see my father make this ambitious film. He made this movie called Exodus, and the opening credits of it, it's basically just sheets of paper with the titles on it, and he set each paper on fire, so the titles go up in flames. And just see that as a kid, it's like, that's really inspiring. My parents never said, it's not practical. You can't get into entertainment. You can't get into movies or acting because you need to be a lawyer. Or nothing like that. They basically said, well, if you want to do it, do it. So living out here, growing up here, my brother and I,
Maui.
Maui, my brother and I were in Maui Youth Theater Productions, and this is such an arts-rich culture. So getting into film and art and television and theater, very easy out here. I find that there's a real rich community. There's always been a rich community. I went to college for years, and even when I came back, moved back in 2014, I just found that it hasn't diminished at all. The love for the arts out here is so strong and so potent and so powerful.
So you moved back, so you were on the mainland working same industry?
Yeah, well, what I was doing was, basically, I went to college in 1996 with the hope of, just being gone for 4 years and coming back. That was all. I was just going to go to college because my father wanted me to go to college. I didn't want to go to college. My dad wanted me to go, and all my buddies were going. So I thought, well, I guess I got to go to college. And I was supposed to be 4 years. I was a super senior. I was one of those seniors who just took his time, and I bombed some classes, and I took them again, and I bombed them. I'm a great student now, but I was a terrible student. Well, it took a while. So I wound up staying in Colorado longer than I thought. I fell in love. I got married. I got a job at the University of Colorado Springs where I was teaching film classes. I got my degrees. I got my master's from Denver University. I became a member of the Denver Film Critics Society, which inspired me to create the Hawaii Film Critics Society in 2015. It was a big deal for me because Hawaii never had its own film critics society. It seems like a small thing, but for me it's a very big thing because even as a kid I wondered, what do the Hawaii film critics have to say about so-and-so? And I became a professional film critic when I was 30. 30 years old. That was my dream when I was 10 to become a movie critic.
Did you watch Siskel and Ebert as a kid?
I did. Watched Siskel and Ebert. I read all the movie reviews.
Some of you don't know who that is. But,
I hope people know who it is. Yeah, he was a very big deal. Roger Ebert in particular, he came to Maui in 94. I remember he had a special screening, and he was incredibly nice. That's when I met him. I got to meet him. He did a signing at the Walden Bookstore at Queen Kalmana Center, and I got to meet him and spend some time with him. And he was incredibly nice, and he signed my book, and I still have the book. It says, To Barry, a movie lover, love Roger Ebert. Like, thank you, Roger Ebert. He is the only movie critic to ever win the Pulitzer Prize. He's really there's movie critics and there's Roger Ebert. He kind of fits in his own.
Well, I remember Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert. They were like early in the television critics that I remember, and they became memorable. Well, you're a memorable writer here on Maui. Before I came to school, I really didn't have much understanding of Barry because, when you see a name in the paper, you don't know. But he's also the star of local, I was going to say stage, but television. You have a show every week.
I do. Yeah, that's right. I do.
And the name of your show is?
It's What's Going On, which is a great question if you've seen the show.
On?
Yes.
He and Joel Agnew have a show that tells you what's cooking here in Maui. So if he sounds like looks like a familiar face to those, some of you are watching on FaceTime, some at MauiNeutralZone.com. Some are listening on KAKU Radio 88.5 FM, because I'm here with Barry Wurst, and you can't see him. But if you can't see him, this is the guy that has What's Going On. Yeah, that's him. He's the film guy. He is here on Maui. When I think about reviews, years ago, maybe I was going to say when you were growing up, that's not fair. Barry is I wasn't going to say not only an adult, he could almost
adult, in quotations.
I'm getting so
grown
old.
up.
Someone who's in their 40s is like young to me. But, it's a very interesting perspective. That's what this film thing has really been, a historical journey. I've loved it. But I was talking about reviewers.
Yeah.
John Woodhouse was around.
Thank you for bringing up John Woodhouse. I love John Woodhouse's reviews of Maui News, and Rick Chattanooga, of course.
And Rick Chattanooga, yeah.
Absolutely.
And these guys, again, I grew up on them on Maui.
Me too.
And you also. And it's really nice to see what you've done with it. When you listen to his film reviews on your show, you pick what's coming, or you pick only what's here?
What I do is we talk about movies that are coming out. It's a lot of things. We specifically focus on theater, all the theater events. We talk about all the concerts, some of the big acts that are coming, and then there's inevitably, because I'm part of the show, it is kind of film heavy. I try to keep it a little more balanced, but some weeks there's just nothing going on but movies. So I'll talk about movies that are in theaters, movies that are coming soon, and also I'll do a Barry's Picks, as I call it, and it's just basically something that's a little obscure and a little hard to find, or something people may have forgotten and never have seen. So I'll make a recommendation, and I always steer people to Paradise Video, because it's the last video store on the island. It's one of the only video stores left in America, and they're doing really well.
Well, you got me to go in, and I got The Killer.
Oh, nice.
Al Quantorno, he's a wonderful man.
Yes, he is.
Mentioned about where I could get the movies. So there are a resource in the middle of town in Kahului, Paradise Video. Thank you very much.
Yes.
You grew up on them probably, but everybody else went away.
There was one in Pukalani that was the Kui building, which now has Serpico's. I grew up in Makawao, so this was a really big deal, and it's a very different culture now, obviously, because it used to be the thing where Tuesday would come and be okay, like this is when all the new movies coming out, and whatever the title was, it's like we got to get it. So you'd walk in there and people would be just kind of standing around, milling around, waiting for all the new movies to come out, or you'd be waiting for they always have these little tags in the boxes saying, sorry, we're out entertaining, and you're waiting for the one you've been just craving to see. Maybe someone at the last minute will come and put it on the shelf. Very different culture. And you're standing around with a bunch of film nerds talking story about movies. It was just a different thing. It reminds me back like when we used to have record stores, and music stores, and you would just be talking to people about your favorite tunes, and you'd just be standing around, you'd be talking to the guy at the counter about the new album that came out. I miss that, because I do love how the internet has brought so many people together and create so many languages, so many conversations rather. But I do miss the one-on-one conversation. I do miss what video stores used to provide, and I love that Paradise Video still has has that. Because I grew up on video stores. For me, that was my film library. And I think we've lost something because there's something different about that sense of sharing in that community versus being able to just kind of watch something all by yourself on your phone. I like that the internet makes so many movies available, but there's a lot of movies that aren't actually available, believe it or not, if you actually look into it. There's a lot, And I miss that tangible thing of actually having a film and having that conversation.
Well, you know, I was just thinking coffee clutch, but I mean, I've seen private film things that people have in their home, and they have, like, on Monday night you can go to these guys' house and watch a movie, and they have that every week. So maybe more film clubs, but that's a whole thing that's gone away. I know. Certain parts of our culture, we now get stuck looking at these little devices, and we're all getting separated, and movies are so many titles. It's like, out of here. I can't imagine with all the films in the world. When we were in class the first day, someone said something, and Barry would come out with, we could do it here. Well, I want to say show and tell. It's like I mentioned director. What's your favorite film? Oh, Runaway Train. How do you watch all these films and know all this stuff?
I love this stuff. No, because you mentioned Runaway Train, and I immediately said Andrei Konchalovsky. That's a 1995 Russian film, and it's with, of course, the wonderful. Well, he's controversial now, but Jon Voight. Jon Voight at one point.
He's a wonderful.
Let's be very clear. Jon Voight at one point it was De Niro, it was Pacino, it was Hoffman, and it was Jon Voight. Those guys were the kings of 70s cinema. And Jon Voight did this film in '85 called Runaway Train. He did it with Eric Roberts and Rebecca De Mornay. It's an interesting film that you brought up because it was directed by a Russian. It was written by Akira Kurosawa, not only a Japanese filmmaker, but one of the greatest, and it has an American cast, and it was filmed in Canada. So it's this bizarre amalgam, and it's one of the greatest movies ever made, and it's very hard to find.
Well, it's very interesting that this guy listen to this. He even knows how to say Russian names well. Anyway, I have so enjoyed your class. I want you to know, for all of you out there, the University of Hawaii, Maui College, has had lots of things. They were a 2-year school. Now they're a 4-year college at campuses. And I don't know when it was, but in recent time, Brian Cohn took over as he was our guest last week on the show. I just wanted to keep a good thing going here because the reason he has a great program is because, of course, having input from people like he's brought on his team. And you came.
This is my first semester,
and I'm like so thankful that I changed my schedule around so I could take your class, and I'm taking a class with Adi Alad.
He's terrific.
The University of Hawaii Maui College has a creative media department. It even has a certificate coming up. So if that's of value as you're learning things, but Maui has such a wonderful resource in these guys, the ability to be taught by people that have a wealth of knowledge and really are, I want to say, there's a master apprentice program. You're bringing along future Kurosawas and
I hope so.
John Woos and I can't do that Russian one. I forgot his name.
Andrei Konchalovsky. Yes.
There you go. What other movies has he done? You have any?
He did The Tin Drum. That's his most famous film. But beyond that, he's interesting because he was brought on to finish this Stallone movie called Tango and Cash. That might be the most successful film he ever made. But he was brought on. Basically, they had gone through directors. That movie was so troubled. It's Stallone and Kurt Russell, and they brought him in to finish the film.
Well, it's really very interesting to watch these directors. I watch stars and actors, but I wasn't really tracking directors. But now when you hear the kind of things, like when I say John Woo, I can say things like Killer, Mission Impossible. I didn't know this. Hard Target. Yeah. And, but also you get sweet and passionate, gentle films. Give us an example. I'm just trying to point out the fun that's in this guy. You should take this class. You say, well, how did this piece go with that piece, go with this piece? But directors have, they make their own tracks in the snow.
Yes.
And they're very interesting routes. What's a couple of more recent movies from John Woo, for example?
Well, Woo is interesting because he's gone back to making films strictly in China, and they're big films. He did a film called The Crossing, and it was this 2-part epic, and it dealt with it's been referred to as the Chinese Titanic. The story and both the film itself is this big, expensive epic.
Wow.
And then he went back to his action movie roots recently and made a film called Red Cliff. It's a 2-part film. It's this historical epic. It's one of the greatest films he's ever made, and the size of it, the scope of it is just staggering. At the time, it was the most expensive film ever made in the People's Republic of China. And the last film I think he made came out a couple years ago. It was called Manhunt. And Manhunt is a return to The Killer and Hard Boiled and Hard Target. It's back to his trademark shoot 'em ups with lots of slow motion, lots of doves flying around, and speedboat chases. And it's the plot of it is completely absurd, but in terms of being an action movie, it's fantastic. He has not lost his ability at all to make action balletic and poetic, and he's just someone who loves cinema. He loves the language of cinema, so there's a lot of beauty in his image.
Don't you love Barry's words? Balletic. I'm like, man, that's a really good word. You know, we critics, when reading you were painting. When Ariel was talking about your review of Stoke, the excitement and insights that you gave into that. And now we had the great fortune to have the director and the
director and
writers,
yeah,
at our class. And thank you for that. That was wonderful.
Yeah, that was a privilege. Thank you. I agree. I'm so glad you were there for that. Yeah, Zoe Eisenberg and Philip Spacen, who wrote and directed and produced this film on the Big Island. This is an independently made movie on the Big Island. It's interesting because, as I've noted many times in our class, how are we doing on time? We're good?
We're good.
Okay.
I say, because it's only because I can't see. I'm thinking, okay, we're at 21. We're good. We got 6 minutes.
It definitely give me the kill signal if I need to start talking.
No. I just take out my double shotgun and throw some doves.
Some doves will fly around.
John Woo, you can't come back to that style. Where did he go? What kind of other things? You had mentioned some names of films. I thought, boy, that is so different than my vision of this director. When you're hired as a director, you decide whether you want to say yes or not if someone else wrote it and they're offering you a lot of money to do something. So The Killer, way back when, he wrote and
directed it. That's his baby.
And then he did Hard Target, which was Jean-Claude Van Damme. I don't want to spout because you're the expert. Everything. What do I say? Everything I say, this guy made me what I am today. By the way, someone told me W.C. feels that W.C. stood for water closet. That's not good, is it?
That sounds like a line that he would have thrown out there.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, but with John Woo, I love that you saw Hard Target because that's his first American film. And that was kind of the change for him because he did these 2 big films in China, being Hard Boiled, which is brilliant, and then The Killer, which you've seen. And then that brought him to America, and Jean-Claude Van Damme was the first one to say, we need to give a shot. We need to give this guy a shot because he's a genius. And he had a hard time making Hard Target because the studio said it's way too violent. Apparently, the original cut of that film was twice as long as the version you saw. If you can imagine that, apparently it was incredibly gory. But after that, he had the opportunity to direct Broken Arrow with John Travolta and Christian Slater, which was a big success. And that led to Face Off, which is the most successful American movie he's ever made. And it's probably the best American movie he's done because it looks and feels like The Killer and Hard Boiled. It has that aesthetic. And then, of course, Mission Impossible 2, which a lot of people have a hard time with because it's a very well-established genre. It's it's Ethan Hunt, it's Tom Cruise, it's IMF, and it's done in the John Woo style. So there are doves flying around. There's all these slow-motion action sequences. I think it's a great film. People have a hard time with it because it is an auteur. It is a director with a very distinct style, putting his personal imprint on the material. Some people have a hard time with that. They're like, I know what this is. I know what Mission Impossible is. I don't like the John Woo version of this.
Oh, but it was interesting.
Yeah, it was interesting to see him do that.
Well, and interesting because I thought it was a tamed down version of John Woo.
Yes, it's very tame for him. Yeah.
Well, that was interesting. But now he did. I could be confusing it. Did he do Driving Miss Daisy?
No, different dude. That's Bruce Beresford, Australian guy.
Oh, okay. There was some. What other movies did John Woo do?
Well, let's see. After Mission Impossible 2 came Wind Talkers. It was a World War II film with Nicolas Cage, extremely violent. It's been called the worst, the most historically inaccurate military film ever made. It takes a lot of liberties with history. It's a very well done film, but it's not all that sturdy. He did a film with Ben Affleck. It was based on a Philip K. Dick novel called Paycheck, which is probably his tamest movie. I think you could show that film on the Disney Channel. It's kind of embarrassing how tame it is. And then the failure of that film led him to kind of looking inward and making films that are a little smaller in scope. His filmography overall, if you look at the stuff that he did in China, you'll see comedies and musicals. He did a Vietnam film called Bullet in the Head, very appropriate title for John Woo. And he's a lot more versatile than some people make him out to be, but because he's so famous for his action movies, he's been pigeonholed for making action movies. And it's been hard for him because he's tried to make films that are kind of against the grain, but everybody wants to see The Killer and Face Off and Hard Target. And we should be grateful for that, obviously, because he really is one of our most influential and really one of our greatest action movie directors. But as an artist, as a filmmaker, he's capable of so much.
When I see this kind of discussion, imagine we're talking about one little piece. I would get Barry is an encyclopedia, an encyclopedic outline of great things, like each subject. Like we talk about Clint Eastwood. Do you remember Clint Eastwood when he was doing movies? He was the tame kind of guy. Then he went through all these and doing all kinds of movies. Lee Marvin. I don't know what's making me think of these names. These are names that are old. Do you study older movies?
Of course, yes.
Borgnine and Marty
of course.
and the history of. Do you mostly looking at television, or mostly film?
Mostly film. I mean, I'm a TV guy because it's funny. It's ironic that I'm about to say this, because my favorite TV show of all time is The Twilight Zone, and The Twilight Zone actually returns today. There's a new version of it on CBS All Access that Jordan Peele, the writer-director, has executive produced. I love The Twilight Zone. I love the golden age of television. I do. I look at a lot of that great stuff. It's funny because for all the things about The Honeymooners, for example, that are kind of dated, that show is brilliant. And same thing with I Love Lucy, same thing with Leave It to Beaver. Like, they are, it's quintessential TV, and it's absolutely terrific. I do miss some of the golden age of TV. The nice thing about TV now is not only is television great, in some cases it's better than movies. A friend of mine got me hooked on Breaking Bad, which I thought was better than every movie I saw that year.
Wow.
There was Twin Peaks came back 2 years ago, and I thought it was better than everything I'd seen in theaters that year. Television is fantastic. There's just so much of it between all the streaming options. There's never been more options for TV.
We're going to take a break and go to people that can keep us running here. I'm with Barry Wurst, film critic, wonderful professor at UHMC, and it really is a pleasure. We'll be right back here. The Neutral Zone, with me, Jason Schwartz, would like to thank Maui Arts and Music Association, Treemakers Foundation of Maui, for their support. Since 1991, with hundreds of television shows and their MauiArtsandMusic.com website, they have championed self-sustainability on Maui. The Neutral Zone is heard live Mondays at 11 a.m. and replayed Saturday at 7 a.m. on KAKU 88.5 FM, the voice of Maui.
Do you have something to say but can't find an outlet? Did you know that Akaku offers a service called Open Mic? Here, you can come in and make a statement on any topic you want, and it's free. Play a song you wrote, recite a monologue, do a funny dance, comment on a recent event. The floor is yours. Come speak your mind for free. Appointments are available Mondays and Wednesdays between 1 and 3. Call 871-5554 today to reserve your spot.
The Grateful Dead played a different set list at every show. Since no two concerts were ever the same on stage, the same goes with the Grateful Dead radio program on KAKU 88.5 FM. Saturday night at 8 and Sunday night at 9, it's Dead Air. It's an hour of killer recordings, stories from the Tapers section, tall tales from the parking lot, and I'll throw in an interview from time to time. Hey, I'm Corey Daniels. Saturday night at 8 and Sunday night at 9, you'll get Dead Air on KAKU 88.5 FM, the voice of Maui.
Hi, I'm Jason Schwartz, host of The Neutral Zone. KAKU is a listener-supported station. This means that all of the great programs you hear, like mine, are sponsored by you as well as our underwriters. If you would like to help keep the voice of Maui talking loud and clear, go to kakufm.org/donate today and give. And don't miss the Neutral Zone Mondays at 11 a.m. on 88.5 FM, the voice of Maui.
You make sure his toys don't have any sharp edges. You taught her what to do when the smoke alarm goes off and to wear a helmet when she rides her bicycle. You do so much to keep your child safe. But are you using the right car seat for your child? Car crashes are a leading killer of children ages 1 to 13. Protect your child's future at every stage of life. For information on the right seat for your child, visit safercar.gov/the right seat.
A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
We are back. I'm here with Barry Wurst. He is the best film critic, but he is here on Maui with us. Barry is a University of Hawaii Maui College professor in cinema, and our guest here, KAKU 88.5 FM. Some of you are watching on television and wondering, what is this? This is radio on television. You know, if we were Larry King, you might understand it a little bit more, but that's what we're doing. And you know who Larry King is? Some of you.
Charlie Rose. Dick Cavett.
Yeah.
So, go way back there.
Yeah, well, you know, interview things that sort of like could be on any medium. In time, we're going to be putting, you know, B-roll, so some of our things we're talking about will be visually available on TV.
Cool.
And we want you to know that there's a radio station, because somehow people don't know that KAKU 88.5 FM is at Akaku Maui Community Media, but is a separate radio station that needs separate support and also needs to find viewers like you. So go check. There are amazing shows on the station, and they're also on Facebook Live. You can find this show and all the previous shows of mine at MauiNeutralZone.com, and they're all up on YouTube. So we're trying to get everyone to be looking and finding us. You know, when I think of it, Kauai Radio, they've had a lot of talk radio. Who else has been talk radio on this island, Barry? Do you remember?
Well, there's Joel Agnew, of course, the Joel Agnew Show every Friday morning on Kauai. I definitely should plug Joel's show.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's every Friday at 8 o'clock, I think.
And Manao is mostly music. There's some talk stuff. Other stations that are doing talk. We are the talk station. We hope to be the voice of Maui. But that takes you. We even have a call-in number, I should tell you right now, and we'll put it on the screen, 808-873-3435. Sometimes we have subjects and people call in with comments and questions. And if you have anything you'd like to know about movies, we are here with the, I want to say the answer man, but...
Well, we'll see. We'll see.
Meanwhile, I have to be able to hear it. So if there's a phone call, you know, I feel it's very funny. I'm like Ray Charles driving. I keep thinking I'm going to have to start doing music because I can't see, I can't hear, but I can still sing. So my career path is taking, you know, sort of focusing here. And our sponsor is the Maui Arts and Music Association.
Fantastic.
We have others, and so you should check that out, because it's amazing to me that there are so many wonderful people on this island that the world needs to know. And there are so many different pieces that look like everything's separate, but we're on an island, and we shine, and could shine to the world and show all aspects, including ourselves, sustainability, our incredibly rich people. We had Brian here. He's talking about Maui Youth Theater.
Yeah,
right?
Maui Youth Theater, yeah.
See, we have great groups on this island. We speak about some of our directors and producers here like they're gods. When we say David Johnston at Maui Academy of Performing Arts, you know, or we're talking about, well, I shouldn't say.
Sally Sefton. We talk about Francis Tawa. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of...
And older ones like Sue Loudon. There are people
Sue
that
Loudon
have been major influence and centers to keep the flame alive for art and music. You know, we talk about Maui being a rich place, and you're wondering where you can go and talk about films again. Another thing I see that's been drying up is they rather have a few more tables than bring in live music. We've really seen less music around and available, less Hawaiian music and culture. So we hope to be able to enrich it, and through the brand, be able to bring and tie all these things together so that the world, when they come here, will come and look for the mama symbols on all kinds of different things going on, all kinds of different groups and organizations, and let the world see who and what we are. And I'm very proud of I've been on Maui since 1988. How old are you? You're not
42.
42. So in 1988, you were
I was 11, but I actually moved to Maui the year before, 1987.
So here we are. For the last 30 years, 31 years, Maui has been home. And, they say we could go right or we could go wrong. Well, a lot of people say we've gone left instead of right. And that's why I ran politics and do all kinds of stuff. We are in a new age, and it was only a dream at some point about film in Hawaii. And here I think about what you've done in your class with us. Do you know that we're in a little segment now? We just got to see a movie called Stoke, and we got to see a writer and director, and we got close up and personal. The guy that's running our department, Brian Cohn, did Get a Job, which was a very wonderful local movie. If you haven't seen it, Get a Job. And then there's another movie called Kuleana. We're going to see that on Wednesday of this week. We are getting shown local movies. There's a gentleman, remember that Destin, what's his name?
Destin Cretton, yes.
Now here's a story and a half.
Yeah.
Here's a local story of a guy that I'll let Barry tell us. Isn't that amazing?
I love Destin. I had the privilege to interview him about 5-6 years ago. He did a film called Short Term 12. It was his big film debut, and it starred Brie Larson, who's now currently playing Captain Marvel. And it's a personal film from his experience, from his life, and it's a hard film to explain. I just want to say, see it. Just see it. It's wonderful. And it was his first movie. And we weren't really sure if anything would come of that, or if it was the beginning of something. We really weren't sure the direction he was taking. A couple years later, he comes out with this film called The Glass Castle with Woody Harrelson and Brie Larson and Naomi Watts. And it's a devastating film, and it really impacts everyone I know who's seen that film has a very strong opinion on it. And then, of course, now his third movie into his film career, he's now directing a Marvel movie.
Listen to that.
This multi-million-dollar.
So I guess Brie Larson had a little to do with it. Maybe he said, "Hey, what about this guy? We've done 2 movies together, and he's terrific." I wouldn't be surprised.
Likewise, yeah, that might have something to do with it. But yeah, it's amazing, but he's got the goods, he's got the talent,
and he's a local guy.
He's from Haiku, for Pete's sake. Yeah, he's a local boy.
So now, with that as sort of like an arrow out with us, I don't want to say ahead of us, but let's say that we have in our quiver successful people teaching us and being inspiration right now for all of you out there who'd like to learn and create a clean industry here. Imagine our exportable technology, instead of just having movies that show vacations in Hawaii. Yeah. That's another thing we learned. Tell us about that.
That's something we spoke about in class, and I'm very passionate about this. And I had the opportunity to actually do a kind of a miniature version of this class in Colorado. And it was interesting that even mainlander students were very receptive to this. Just the question of how many movies can you think of that actually have a local Hawaiian perspective, that are about local culture, that take place in Hawaii in its modern day. And it's from the perspective of people who live there and what they're going through. And it talks about multiculturalism. It talks about the mixed play culture out here. You don't ever see that. It typically, if it's a movie about Hawaii, it's typically from the point of view of a Caucasian outsider, and you always see it through their point of view. And it's not that that story is invalid and that story doesn't have merit, but it's limited. And almost all of those movies are limited, and too many of those films have that perspective. And it's really unfortunate, because there's, to say the least, to speak to the choir, there's such a wealth of history, of stories, of narratives, of complexity out here that has never really been attempted. You have rare independent films. You have Brian Cohn's movie Kuleana, which I think is a great example. There is a lovely, lovely filmmaker who's no longer with us named Kaio Hata. She made a film in 1995 called Picture Bride. We'll be watching that soon in my class. Oh, Picture Bride is the first film from Hawaii to ever play at the Cannes Film Festival. It's absolutely fantastic. And it has a local perspective. It has Pidgin English in it. And it is about, the wonderful mixture of cultures and people living on this island, and the complexity of that structure. Most movies don't talk about that. There have been films made in the last 20 years made on this island that actually does portray the image that if you come to Hawaii, we're all living in huts by the beach, we're all surfers, we're all eating pineapple, and we're just like living this blissful fantasy life. Like it looks like an Elvis movie. And I love Elvis movies, fine, but that's, Blue Hawaii, it wasn't reality then, it's not reality now. so I love that independent film is slowly but surely capturing some truth, because there's been a lack of truth about movies that have been made here, that are about here. Too many movies come out here, they use Maui or Hawaii or Big Island or wherever as a backdrop, and you never get any sense of who are these people? What is it really like to be here? What does it really mean to be Hawaiian? And what does it really mean to be a part of this mixed blade culture? What does that even mean? Most movies don't even attempt that. Brian's film Kuleana does that. I feel Stoke from the Big Island really captured an aspect of that.
Yeah.
And as I said, the movie Picture Bride, which for me that's the gold standard of all films that have been shot here. That movie has a sense of history and a sense of identity that too many other films have lacked. But, for me, it's also this ridiculous thing. It's like Hawaii has such a rich love of the arts. We should have our own voice and identity as filmmakers, certainly. I want to see more of that. I want to see the Hawaiian Steven Spielberg. I want to see the Hawaiian Christopher Nolan. Why can't we have that? And I love that, now we have Destin Cretton, who is very much creating a name for himself. He hasn't made, as of right now, he has not made a movie about Hawaii. And that's okay, because apparently that's coming, or at least he has indicated to me that he wants to make that film. But for now, he's going to make this $200 million Marvel movie, and I wish him all the
$200 million Marvel movie.
But he's the guy. He's the guy to do it, and he's a great filmmaker. So yeah, I wish him all the best.
What a wonderful thing for him. Blessings to him. That's great. And see, you could be the next Destin Cretton, and not only that, we have an amazing outlet here. We're not like, I don't want to knock Kansas, but we're not Kansas anymore, Dorothy. We're in Maui, and here we have we're the focus. We're like the jewel of the Pacific. We're the most remote landmass. We're the bridge between the East and the West. We can showcase it all here and be a self-sustainability model with clean, exportable vision from Hawaii, and help Hawaii and Hawaiians re-establish their culture's international presence, and really give Hawaii, I think, a shot in the arm that, I think it really needs. You're right at the center of it. Your inspiration in class has just been, I watch the faces of these young people. I say, I'm 3 times as old as they are. More. God. But as they're listening to you, I can't imagine. I'm writing down so many names of titles. I don't know how I can watch the amount of incredible things that you point out. You really have been just a fountain of information.
Thank you.
And I think that anyone out there that really loves film will find this class and this program, but this class really rewarding. You have stuff coming up. I want to know what to take in the fall. What's coming up?
Thank you. Yeah, I'll plug my upcoming classes next semester. Doing this class again, although it'll be modified. This is the beta test version of this class, so it'll be a little different. Some of the selections will be different. Some of the emphasis will be different, but it will be world cinema, as you've known, dealing with films from all over the globe, establishing the different directors and different filmmakers who've added to the language of cinema, and then of course dealing in the last half of the class, dealing specifically with locally made movies and what local filmmakers have to say as filmmakers and as artists. So I'll be doing that class. I'll be doing a class, very ambitious class, called The History of Mass Media, which deals with the history of television, newsprint, movies, internet, and I think I'm missing something else there. But it's basically about mass media from the 20th century to now, how they all kind of interweave the relationship between media and television and film and whatnot. So that'll be an interesting class. And then a year from now, the class I'm probably the most excited to teach, because I've never had the privilege of doing this kind of class, and I've always wanted to. I'm doing a class on horror films.
Whoa,
that'll be a year from now, and I can't wait to do that. As you know how I feel about horror films, so I'm really excited about that.
It is so interesting to sit in a generation of people that horror films. When I grew up, and we saw The Killer, John Woo, and all these things that were so outrageous, and the Wild Bunch. I remember when they changed the ratings on films because of this film that showed so much blood. This stuff is tame compared to what's going on now. So I'm sure that's going to be an ambitious and interesting visual experience.
Yeah.
Whew.
Yeah, but I promise it will not be just an assault on the senses. I did teach, I didn't teach. I took a class on horror films once, and it was, The Exorcist. It was a lot of movies that most people don't kind of just sit and comfortably watch and enjoy. So I have chosen. I'm working on the syllabus as we speak,
sure.
but I've been cobbling together some of the films I'm going to be using, and a lot of them they're just great films. It's not going to just be people getting their heads cut off. Like there's a lot to speak about with horror, certainly with its history, how it reflects history then and now. And there was an interesting study recently, actually. It was last year. It came out. This study that women, particularly, are a huge member of the horror movie going audience because horror films have been scientifically known to be films that feel cathartic for women. Women see the films, they want to scream, they want to be on the edge of their seat, they want to be, so full of the tension that the film provides, and then they walk out of the film thinking, it's a cathartic experience. And apparently more so than men, who tend to go to these movies, for, just to speak generally, they tend to go for just the, the sensation, the thrill, the exploitation of it, whatever. But women, in many cases, have been known to go to horror films, and it's like, it's an experience. It's like getting off of a roller coaster.
Well, what a different societal thing. I mean, when we look in the real news, and then we see horror films, I mean, I'm an older, I'm older than you guys. I'm thinking, how does that move over into real life?
I think that's an interesting question, especially now, because a lot of, certainly a lot of the young people in the class that you're in, a lot of young people I encounter, 9/11 was something that happened to them when they were children. They either vaguely remember it or they don't remember it at all. But America after 9/11, not to get really dark here, but
sure.
The point I'm trying to make is it's hard to scare people now because of all the stuff that's on the internet, because of all the things that we've seen, because of all the things in real life. It's similar to a little before I was born, but in the 70s, America after Vietnam, after Watergate, after Charles Manson, you get to that
and after this media thing, like now you can see it up close in color. Until they pull it off the net, that was somebody getting killed in front of you.
Right.
They behead someone and things, and the world has gotten... So it's a blurry line to me. I think I brought it up in class even. Just a horror. I'm very interested to understand the medium, but also as it reflects in our society and what to do to get people in... I guess the visioning is there what's the opposite? Is there such a thing as an opposite of horror film?
Oh, sure, comedies. Yeah, comedies probably. Yeah, although I think the two kind of fit together. Horror comedy is a genre, and I find that they actually fit well together. Because when you're watching horror movies, often there's nervous laughter. So there is that the two emotions seem so versus going or going but the two are actually very close together because when you're doing one, you really do want to do the other. And there are examples. For example, one of the great ones is called An American Werewolf in London. Came out in 1981. It's one of the great horror comedies because it's a horror film through and through. It's terrifying, but the characters in it are funny. The movie isn't trying to be funny. It just has a really hip sense of humor about itself.
When I'm thinking of that film, first I got the name Warren Zevon. I don't think he had anything to do with that.
He did not, but I believe that song is referenced in the film. Yeah.
But also, I remember there was a guy, David, with dark hair. That's the one you mean, right? Where he's in London and he's bitten and the whole thing?
Yes, that's the one.
So it had a satiric and it had a comedic style.
It was one of the...
I remember it was a scary movie to me.
It's a terrifying film, but it's also really funny because the characters are, they're hip, they're very self-aware, they've seen werewolf movies, so they're, and the film was very ahead of its time in that respect because it wasn't trying to hold the audience hand, it wasn't winking at the audience, it was simply presenting this scenario completely straight-faced, but the characters are so funny that the movie inevitably is so funny. that you can't imagine. I can't imagine the world without
American Werewolf
in London. It's a great film. And a couple years later, you had Ghostbusters, and you've had Men in Black. Like a lot of movies with very similar attitudes, where it's a genre film, but because the characters themselves are funny, that the comedy comes naturally, as opposed to something that really tries to be ha-ha funny.
Who directed Ghostbusters? When I think of that, I think of Harold Ramis. Now I think of him as a director. Did he direct that one?
Thank you for bringing up Harold Ramis. No, he didn't, but he's in the film. It's Ivan Reitman, who's a Canadian filmmaker.
I see.
And Harold Ramis, of course, helped write it, and of course he's in it. He plays Egon.
And I remember him for the Twilight Zone. Isn't he with the Twilight Zone director?
No? John Landis. Interesting. Yeah, John Landis.
How I'm putting these guys together.
No, you're absolutely. That's the same. It's funny you mentioned that. Yeah, it's John Landis famously directed a very infamous segment of Twilight Zone, the movie, which came out in '83. And John Landis was coming off of the success of the Blues Brothers, which he directed, as well as Animal House and American Werewolf in London. When they made Twilight Zone, the movie in '83, the idea was to get the biggest names in Hollywood to direct. So they got John Landis, Steven Spielberg directed a portion of it, and George Miller and Joe Dante. And of course, as you may remember, there was a helicopter accident. Yeah. Not to go all dark, but there was a helicopter accident that famously took the life of Vic Morrow and two children, Renee Chen and Michael
He had
Denley.
a great television show. See, back in the old days when there wasn't as much media or access to media, children, if you will, the world, you had to go to the film and go to the TV, and there was just few stations. We are so flooded now. I'm amazed that you are just such a wealth. Can you see why I'm in class? I'm so fascinated. There was a midterm, and I got a few wrong and got some extra credit, but I just remember because just so many fun things to learn. I mean, if I wasn't a fan of movies, after going to your class, I would be.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
And you've really opened, a window to international films. What do you think is going on in the world now, when thinking about international? Any new things going on?
It's interesting because right now, you do have this this question of where do films stand, because Netflix has really drawn kind of a line in the sand for a lot of people, because on the one hand, I mean, and this is a very rich topic, and I feel like it's not going away, because Netflix is this out of control animal. It is so monstrously successful. The Cannes Film Festival is the most prestigious film festival in the world. If a film premieres at Cannes, it's going to be noticed, it's probably going to be marketed, and it's probably going to be seen by millions of people. Movies like Pulp Fiction, for example, have premiered there. So the Cannes Film Festival a couple years ago basically said, no, we are never allowing a Netflix film to come here again. It's never going to happen, because we have a rule: movies have to play in theaters for at least a certain amount of months before they can be streamed on these streaming channels. And Netflix is like, well, we're going to have a movie play at a film festival, and then a month later it'll be available for everyone. So it's an interesting thing, because Netflix, on the one hand, is really providing a service for movie lovers, because you could either see it in theaters, and then either at the same time or a few days later you'll get to see it at home. So it is kind of cutting off that need to drive to that obscure art house, or just go to that obscure screening or whatever. But on the other hand, it really is slitting the throat of the movie experience, because the movie experience is very valuable, especially with art movies. You need word of mouth. You need to have those conversations in the hallway afterwards. That is so essential for art movies to exist, because movies, and I don't mean to sound like I don't like mainstream popular movies. I do. But movies like Captain Marvel, they don't need us. They don't need me. They don't need anybody. Those movies, they exist all by themselves. They don't need critics. They really need people to shell out the money. And they do fine regardless, because they are franchise movies. They've got so much working for them, so many things working for them. But when it comes to art house movies, you need everything. You need word of mouth, especially word of mouth. You need people to go back again and again. And with Netflix, yes, the movies become available to people. But how many movies can you think of on Netflix that have never been watched, that are just kind of floating out there in stream world, waiting for someone to discover, that will never be seen because there's so many more mainstream choices? So now, to answer your question directly, internationally, movies are dealing with this dichotomy of do we go the Netflix route, or do we struggle and hope that our movie is going to be found? So it's an interesting thing because Netflix, on the one hand, is like the big brother going, "Don't worry, I'll take care of you." But as we know, big brothers can be stupid and annoying, and and being a big brother, I can say that. On the other hand, there is an old model to making movies where you make a film, you get a distributor, and with little movies, certainly art house films and international movies, you're really hoping that those movies are going to be found and going to be seen, and it's a crapshoot. You never know. You never know if your movie is going to be something that's in theaters for a week and it's gone, or if it becomes the next My Big Fat Greek Wedding, which was a blockbuster that came out of nowhere. So you just never know. And Netflix, there is more of a guarantee your film is going to be seen, but then it's going to be seen on Netflix and probably not at all anywhere else. Last year, I'll end this diatribe this way. Last year, Orson Welles, the last film he ever made, was finally finished after 40 years. It's pretty amazing. Others finished it for him, but it was according to his wishes, and it's pretty much, I'd say, about 90% to what he wanted. The film is called The Other Side of the Wind. It's on Netflix. It stars John Huston and Peter Bogdanovich. I think it's a great film. It's not perfect, but it's pretty terrific.
The Other Side of the Wind.
The Other Side of the Wind.
Tonight.
It's great. Yeah, it's the last. It's definitely something to talk about. But it's the last Orson Welles film. Most film fans saw it on Netflix. The film played in theaters for about a week in some theaters, and I think it's pretty safe to say that if you've seen that movie, if there's 10 of you who've seen that movie, 9 of you saw it on Netflix. Maybe one person saw it in a theater. So you are losing something there.
Well, I can hardly imagine, and you can hardly imagine, a whole hour's gone by. Barry Wurst, we have a minute or two. I'll put my glasses on to see how many. 55. We have 2 minutes. Barry Wurst has been a wonderful guest.
Thank you.
It's clear you have your own show, but you're overflowing. You have an open door here. You are welcome at
Thank
our
you.
show.
Thank you. I'll take you up on that.
All time.
Thank you.
You've been a great inspiration in the film world.
Thank you.
People out there, you should be checking out University of Hawaii Maui College, Creative Media Department, Barry Wurst. And when you open up Maui Time, you'll see Barry Wurst.
Thank you for the plug. Yes.
You're gonna see, we got 30 seconds. Wait, it might be a minute 30. Ray Charles is putting on his glasses. He doesn't need glasses.
I see 122. Is that it?
I think we got a minute. There's a left and a right. Can you imagine? I'm trying to edit. It's very hard. And that's why I need all you guys to be learning this stuff and be my eyes and my ears. I'm just going to go back to singing here, Barry, I think. Boy, it's very funny, but that I can do. I can close my eyes and sing, so that's...
Do you have a closeout song that you end the show on?
No, I'm just going to give... We have a little 15-second closing and opening credit music that I styled after one of these TV series of years ago, because I think that we want to be playing it here and then go to a broader audience and attract the mainland. Sure. Anyway, to be continued. You have been a wonderful guest. I'm
Thank you.
Now. Thank
Always
you
a pleasure. Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Thank you guys for joining us. This is KAKU 88.5 FM. The voice of Maui. You can find us online, MauiNeutralZone.com, on YouTube, KAKU on Facebook. We got it all. We are so happy to be here with you. We will see you next week. Aloha. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you. That was fun. Thank you.
The Neutral Zone, with me, Jason Schwartz, would like to thank Maui Arts and Music Association, Dreammakers Foundation of Maui, for their support since 1991.